This is a review of the Out of the Abyss campaign, published by Wizards of the Coast for their Dungeons and Dragons game. But I don't own the book. I don't own the publication. I haven't run it, and so this is a little bit different from other reviews. I am a player in it, and I'm just experiencing it. Now, I've seen one or two live plays of the opening sessions in Velkenvelve. I've played through that, but I haven't. I don't want to know what's coming next, so I haven't read. I think I've heard favourable things about it from other people, but on the sort of just in the community in general. But and I know that I know some things about the book. It's broken into different chapters. I don't know how many in total, but each chapter covers a different location. And so we've been so far to Velkenvelve, Sloopy Doop, if it's called that, the Koator city, Gracklstuck, the Duragar city, the Neverlight Grove of the Myconids, and now, after being captured by Ylvar and taken towards Menzoberran, Menzoberranzan, or whatever it's called, we've escaped and got to the deep gnome Snurfniblin city of Blingdenstone, and we're just beginning to experience that. So I've no idea how far into the adventure that is, but it's not the initial stages, I feel. And these are my feelings about it. Just generally overall, interesting and frustrating. Those are my two main feelings. Frustrating because D&D is usually heroic fantasy, and this isn't. This is more survival horror, and in D&D it's very difficult to judge when it's necessary to run away and when you can stand and fight and when you should run away. There's very little to base your decision on, and well, if you meet a demon lord, fair enough, you should run away, and you can tell that. But other stages, it's difficult to know, and until you're being annihilated, and then even then the mechanics sort of favor aggression. If you run away, you're more likely to get killed than if you try and finish your opponent before they kill you. So I don't think D&D is suited towards survival horror, nor is the sort of mentality. It is 3/4 of the game is sort of the rules are devoted towards combat and combat resolution. And if you ignore that and run it all the time, it's just frustrating. I started playing a paladin. We didn't start this campaign actually in Out of the Abyss. We were dragged into it Out of the Abyss from after a few surface adventures. We were captured by the Drow and brought down to Velkenvelve, and I had a paladin. And except maybe for a paladin of vengeance, this kind of adventure is difficult to reconcile with your oaths. Your oaths to protect the weak and stand up against evil would basically demand self-sacrifice and death in these situations where the overwhelming evils would destroy you. Now, in this case, I think it's partly down to the GM, because if they provided us with not just the group, but maybe a couple of children or a couple of innocents to get out to the surface, then the oath to protect the weak could take precedence over the oath to oppose evil, and you could stay true to your oaths while playing a survival horror and escaping from all these perils, because you're desperate to get these innocents out of the Underdark. And then I'll break it down into different sections. The first section, in the slave pens, the first session is frustrating. Your objective is to escape, and there is no credible way of escaping. or the ways of us, the ways to escape are offered to you by the GM. There's the risks of anything that the players come up with are just too great because the enemies are too powerful for weaponless, spellless players to stand any chance at all of dealing with. So you're basically just tools in a story for Valkenvelve. Um, this could be got around if the objective was not to escape. You just have to. I would set other objectives. I would create different factions amongst the slaves in Valkenvelve, and your objective is to defeat the enemy factions. To maybe some one faction, the orc and his thugs are collecting improvised weapons for a breakout, or maybe not even a breakout, but just to help them bully the other prisoners. Another group is digging a tunnel or various other objectives. So you can learn. I'd have a sort of in prison set of minor objectives to achieve to help you get to know these other prisoners who are interesting, and to give your players some achievable objectives before the story just moves them on. Because the only real credible way of getting out is escaping during the demon attack, which also is an interesting thing because it sets up what's happening in the Underdark generally. Anyway, once you've escaped from Valkenvelve and you're on the run, interesting. I don't know whether it's my GM or the book. I don't feel it really completely explores or reveals the ecosystems and potential of the Underdark. This is a whole world down there with ecosystems, and at the moment I only get the impression you're in a city or you're in a tunnel. But I think this is possibly my GM's descriptions, not the original book, because I do get clues of really interesting locations. I mean, the Dark Lake had some sort of clues about it. There was a very interesting encounter on a lock that we had that was operated by Duragar with stone giants. Anyway, but these are details. But it's an interesting underground world. But I never experienced any sort of operating countries to support the cities that we've come across. I would like to see herds of underground beasts shepherded by Duragar, for example, fishing fleets. We did come across a few fishing people, but that was it. Fishing fleets in the Dark Lake. Vast slave plantations worked by slaves from the overworld who are mining cropping the edible fungi down there, things like that. So it's not just a cave or a city. There's a whole economy and working down there with ecosystems and how people live and support. And anyway, an interesting setting that wasn't revealed to its full potential, I feel. Exploration is part of the game, and I don't know whether it's out of the Abyss or my GM who didn't explore that to my full interest anyway, enough to fully interest me. But each location has followed a slight pattern of us experiencing the location, then finding out sort of change or something, some struggle in the location, and then finding the demonic influence in it. And all this is building up to make us very alarmed at what's going on overall in the Underdark, and I'm enjoying that element of it. It's a well-written, well-conceived way of building up a feeling of dread and the necessity to act. A negative point is it's difficult to see how to bring in new player characters. In a long campaign, life will get in the way. Some players will drop out, others will join, and there's a good chance of PCs dying in such a dangerous adventure. I had a paladin who died, and my paladin really couldn't survive in the adventure as presented, because it didn't fleeing did not correspond with his oaths. But so he died, and I've replaced it with Eldeth. Eldeth Feldrun of Gauntlgrim, who was one of the other prisoners in the in Valkenvelve, and that fitted well. But how do you bring in surface dwellers into the campaign, to replace players in the campaign, to replace PCs in the campaign? If there are a lot more slaves, surface slaves, witnessed down here, then that would be one source. But so far we haven't seen more. I have more plantations, basically. That's my request. But otherwise, overall, an enjoyable and intriguing campaign. I very like having Ilvara and the Dark Elves there in the first bit, and then reappearing as a threat. We know they're chasing us. It's a good establishment of, and we hate them. We really do hate them as players, which is a very good villain to have. And I'd like to see more of them. And being a slave is also very motivating. It makes you want to have revenge. It makes you care about, I want to destroy Valkenvelve. So overall, interesting, intriguing, but very frustrating. And I've thought of ways I'd do it differently if I GM'd it. My name's Caius. I love role-playing games, and I hope to see you in one in the future.